Well, with more than 10 episodes under our belt, Dan and I have had some impressive guests here. And today we're going to revisit some of those discussions on the BizPo Show. Welcome to the BizPo Show. Well, whether it be governors, astronauts, politicians, or business folks, Dan and I have had some really impressive conversations with our guests so far. And so for today, we thought we might take a look back on some of those conversations and hope you enjoy some of those highlights.
Based upon what we see right now, would we have been better served if we had this handled more centralized, let's say, and had the federal government take the lead as opposed to the individual states?
Well, I've always felt that in a moment of national crisis, which this is, that the national government should lead the conversation. Now, that doesn't mean they have to do all of it. They have to coordinate with the nation's governors and mayors to make sure that everybody has a voice in it and then that they can play a part in helping to execute the plan. But I do think that we would have been a little bit better off in this country if there had been some at least consistent messaging from the White House. You mentioned I got COVID, and I had worn a mask whenever I went outdoors for 7 months. And then for those 4 days that I was in the White House, thinking that I was in a safe space because everyone was getting tested, I took that mask off and I got sick. It seems to me that we should be able to interact with each other, not going to, big arenas or big stadiums and filling them up, but going out to restaurants, going out to stores, going out and doing the things that we need to do to help to run our businesses and our families if everyone takes the precautions that are needed. And I think that's where we missed it. The president missed it by not wearing a mask right from the beginning, not necessarily because he was at risk, although we know he caught COVID as well, but more importantly because he would be setting an example for the American people that was a positive and constructive one from a public health perspective.
Possibly even war in space, right? I know we made movies about that, but could be the future frontier. What are your thoughts on Space Force and the protection and flow of digital information?
Well, generally I'm against any added bureaucracy because I think that a significant percentage of the DoD's budget goes to bureaucracy, and a lot of that bureaucracy is duplication of effort. We've got all these different services. There has been a move over the last couple of decades to do things jointly, to have joint efforts in a attempt to try and overcome some of this bureaucracy, but there is a lot of waste, and I understand why it was done. I'm not, we had U.S. Air Force Space Command that was doing pretty much everything that Space Force is doing right now. The argument is that if you make it a separate force, and this is such an important theater of operations, if you will, that more attention can be put on that and more room for growth. But putting another service in the mix means one more service that's going to fight over limited resources, or I should say finite resources, not limited resources, and which could potentially lead to duplication of effort, and which could be wasteful. So we have to strike a really good balance with that, with the added attention that a separate force could bring towards the space theater of operation. The other thing is the other point is that it could be seen as antagonistic, right? This is the first military space force in history. Will it spur the development of other space forces? Will it, start an escalation of militarization of space? That's a potential too that needs to be carefully looked at and carefully balanced with everything.
And let me say one more thing. When we have gigantic polluters like China and India, we're giving them potentially an unfair advantage on the economic front by us having to do these things related to our climate.
Yeah, it's a good two-part question. I'll take that last part first. I think part of the Biden administration wanting to rejoin some of these multilateral agreements is it gives us some moral authority to try and get China and India, that are huge polluters, in line with what we want to see happen on the world stage. We're 4% of the world's population, but we're 20% of the world's pollution that we see. So we're a big contributor to that. Obviously, India and China are also big when it comes to that. So I think, you're seeing a Biden approach that's obviously more multilateral. We can hold folks to account if we rejoin things like that. But, to the original thrust of your question, Dan, is in the past, I think Democrats have failed to tout some of the job benefits of moving forward in a more green kind of direction with the economy. It's always been framed in that kind of 1-2 jobs versus climate, which has failed us in the past, because it's a great argument, right? You have 1,000 jobs that were just cut overnight with the Keystone XL pipeline, and that's a really effective argument to be made against canceling that contract. But if you talk about the jobs of the future, if you talk about the fact that in the last 3 months of the Trump administration, we lost 37,000 manufacturing jobs to overseas companies. I think if you take things in perspective, as a whole of the economy, I think we're better off when we talk about that trade-off, because it is a delicate balancing act. And we've got to get better as Democrats and people that believe in the climate crisis to talking about the job component of this. And it can't happen overnight. These folks that lost their positions with Keystone XL aren't now going to be able to install solar panels tomorrow. But I think what you saw out of John Kerry and Gina McCarthy are kind of domestic and international climate point people in the administration are, how do we encourage and empower folks within there to move into jobs that are climate focused, not having to move themselves physically, but how can we encourage companies to move in that direction within these cities and municipalities? So it is a difficult trade-off. But again, I think if we do our best level work to not emphasize that trade-off, I think we're going to be better off as Democrats.
What would you tell our viewers as far as what business trend they should pay attention?
Well, with more people working from home, we know that homes are now going to have to be outfitted differently for doing business. It's no longer just the small business owner that's pulling up the dining room chair. It is now a business placing somebody almost in essence in their home. And so an industry that's going to match those needs, I think, is going to be something to be paying attention to, because every business in America is now looking at this.
Well, we hoped you enjoyed that look back through the rearview mirror of these past episodes of the BizPo Show, but we hope you'll join us as we look ahead through the windshield, as many great guests and great conversations are sure to come. Tune in each week. From Dallas, Texas, I'm Seth Denson. We'll see you soon.